It's not about me. It's not about you. It's not even about us. It's about legacy. It's about what we choose to leave behind for future generations. And that's why, for the next year, and for the first time since 1974, the best and brightest men and women of nations and corporations the world over will pool their resources, share their collective vision to leave behind a brighter future. It's not about us. Therefore, what I'm saying, if I'm saying anything, is welcome back.
The work of a single organization, the Syndicate. A rogue nation, trained to do what we do, imbued with a new sense of purpose.
The Syndicate, you say?
Yes, sir. That's what he calls it.
Hello, I'm John Coleman, founder of the Weather Channel, original weatherman on Good Morning America, and a TV meteorologist for 55 years. I love this blue marble, our home. But we're isolated out here in space, and we human beings have a big responsibility. The future of this planet is in our control. Over the last 30 years, we have been told over and over again that we are destroying the climate of this planet through our use of fossil fuels, by leaving our carbon footprints. The CO2 is destroying the climate of this planet. We're told it is causing uncontrollable warming, and the results, we're told, is disaster looming in the very near future. Over and over again, we've been told how the ice will melt and the polar bears are going to die, how the coast will be flooded as the oceans rise, some islands totally wiped out, how powerful hurricanes are going to hit the shore, how millions will die as heat waves sweep the planet, carrying disease that will kill millions more, and our crops will fail, and our civilization will perish. All because we are using fossil fuels and leaving our carbon footprints. We're told that by running our television sets and our cars and trucks and airplanes, burning our electric lights, running heating and air conditioning, computers and cell phones, that we are destroying the climate on planet Earth. And we say, our carbon footprints, are they really doing this? The carbon dioxide that comes out the exhaust of our automobiles and out of the smokestacks of our power plants, the entire global warming frenzy is based on that carbon dioxide increase from the burning of fossil fuels. And how could that be? Isn't CO2 a natural gas that we breathe out? Isn't CO2 a gas that plants need to grow? Hasn't CO2 always been in the atmosphere? Isn't it just a trace gas that is just a fraction of the atmospheric content? Yes to all of those questions. But that very CO2, Al Gore tells us, is fueling global warming that will destroy the climate of planet Earth. And in its reports, the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has told us over and over again how this greenhouse effect is going to create destruction. They call it radiative forcing. The CO2 will, through this formula, have an impact on water vapor that greatly magnifies the greenhouse effect. And that radiative forcing, we are told, will create all of this climate frenzy.
You know, I've been, unfortunately, as I said, conveying the same message for a long time, which is bothersome because, you know, I was sort of hoping that I'd be able to say it once and dust my hands off. But, you know, I knew in the back of my head that it was going to be necessary for somebody to go on and say, no, this is what I meant. This is, no, not this thing you're doing right now. Don't get all excited. It's going to take some time. But this is what I meant.
And what's the message?
The message is that the idea that value is a function of scarcity is wrong. That the industrial model, as useful as it was for a particular part of the human metamorphosis, is no longer a useful way to approach much of human economy, which is now, you know, based in attention and time, which is the really valuable stuff. I mean, for most of the wealthy part of the planet, you know, money is cheap and attention is expensive.
So have you worked out a new intellectual property system?
Oh no, I mean,
no.
Well, the idea that it would be called property just seems dumb to me. You know, I mean, we had a perfectly good system for a long time, which was, you know, patronage, payment for services, relationship. You know, most people who make their living with their mind, I mean, I don't know why this is so radical. I mean, there are a lot of people in this world who make their living with their mind, right? More and more all the time. Very few of them use intellectual property law to protect their ability to do so. You know, lawyers, ironically enough, don't copyright their writs, even if they're about copyright. You know, architects, doctors, I mean, do doctors copyright their prescriptions? No. Because the real value is in the relationship between them and the patient. You know, and what this mind can process with regard to the subject at hand. But, you know, we're still enchanted by this notion of, you know, mass distribution at a time when mass distribution doesn't count that much anymore. I mean, economically, you know, it's not necessary for you to, you know, get everybody on the planet to know who you are in order for you to make money with your head. I mean, in fact, these days, if you approach it that way, you end up like Michael Jackson, which doesn't strike me as an optimal solution. You know, better to be kind of a steady local hero in some part of the human consciousness.
Somewhere in the long tail sphere.
Well, you know, I actually think this long tail thing is a useful concept, though it's getting, you know, ridiculously overused. I mean, maybe there's some resentment on the fact that I feel like the Grateful Dead came up with that too. You know, I mean, in those, you know, when we were first making records, you know, it was assumed that if you didn't have a Boffo hit right out of the box, then you were like washed up. You know, and all of our records went platinum eventually. Sometimes took them like 25 years. I mean, talk about a long tail.
Last year, Mark Cuban was the keynote speaker.
Well, this was probably both different and the same.
Really?
I would guess. I mean, you know, knowing Mark, I mean,
you know him?
Yeah.
He
was even more narcissistic than I am. And shoots from the hip, you know, like, you know, I shoot from the hip with a 6-shooter. He shoots from the hip with an AK-47.
Can you compare and contrast his position and your position on intellectual so-called?
Well, no. I mean, I think Mark and I sort of get it in kind of the same way. He's a well. I mean, the fundamental difference is that I'm wary of money. mean, this will sound like an easy thing to say, but I mean, I could have made a lot of money at various points. You know, being positioned where I was and knowing what I knew and who I knew. But I didn't really want to do that because I could see that it would screw people up. And, you know, Mark took a different view, and, you know, he has to bear the consequences, but which are good. I mean, I'm glad that he did because, he has a lot of energy behind what I would consider to be a joint point of view, you know, that money can provide.
Did you have the same opinion as he on the YouTube, Google, or the YouTube issue?
I don't know what his opinion is on that, actually.
He thought buying YouTube was crazy because of the intellectual property.
No, but it just seems, I don't know what, I mean, you know, see, I know those guys at Google and I knew the Google whiz kids when they were graduate students, and I've known Eric Schmidt since he was like, a product designer at Sun. You know, and they're all, you know, they're amazingly smart guys. You know, and they continuously surprise me. You know, and they'll do something that is you know, seems nonsensical to me, and, you know, it'll turn out to be very smart. This time I think they may have there's always a moment where you become too smart by half. And I think YouTube is a useless investment, actually. Because, I mean, all YouTube is a market. You know, and you know, what's going to happen is that market's going to be universal. You just have to figure out ways to, you know, create the sorting mechanism. You know, which will, I believe, I mean, will naturally develop. You know, that's what happens, I think. You know, I mean, look at a coral reef. A coral reef is an information sorting system. It sorts photons. You know, and it's damn good at it. Rainforest does the same thing. And it takes a long time to develop one of those. I mean, it doesn't happen overnight. But we'll figure out a way to do this. Now, YouTube is a very primitive way of sorting these little 7-minute thingamajigs, you know, in the vast sea of human attention.
Is YouTube likely to be sued because of the so-called infringements on...
Oh, well, yeah, of course. But it's like, who's responsible here? Find the responsible party. I mean, this is why the whole thing is just like completely absurd. You know, you know, as a species, we can fall into a spasm of massive suit, you know, until we can't do a goddamn thing. Or we can just say, well, let's get over it. Let's find another way.
It was on a day like this, in a place like this, that I first met Walter Mitty, that purveyor of those golden moments that last a lifetime in the game of college football.
Keith Jackson's voice will forever echo on Saturday afternoons in the fall.
The royalty of college football is in assembly at the Rose Bowl 2006. We're going to play football. Yippee! One man. Goodbye. By Teague. George Teague to the end zone, touchdown.
Jackson covered a host of events in his Hall of Fame career, including the Olympics, the NFL, and Major League Baseball. But he became synonymous with college football. Born in rural Georgia, Jackson joined the Marines at age 16. While enrolled at Washington State, he began his broadcasting career by calling a 1952 game between the Cougars and Stanford. He joined ABC Sports in 1964 as a radio correspondent and became a fixture on ABC's Wide World of Sports. Jackson's interests went beyond sports, as he considered Edward R. Murrow his idol. Jackson even covered a Republican National Convention with Walter Cronkite. But it was through college football that Jackson established his legacy. He called 15 Rose Bowls, coining the term the granddaddy of them all, and gave Michigan Stadium the nickname the Big House. For more than 5 decades, as the autumn leaves changed, Jackson's folksy delivery remained the same.
And when the Wolves come onto the field, you'll hear a roar that'll knock pine cones out of trees 50 miles away. Going, touchdown!
Oh, Nellie came from my great-grandpa. And then he would do something or drop something or whatever, and oftentimes you'd hear him say, "Whoa, Nellie, whoa, Nellie."
Jackson retired in 1999, but returned to broadcast college football games for another 7 seasons. In 2014, Washington State named a building in its broadcasting college in his honor.
And I'm delighted to the bottom of my soul that today could happen, because it caps another time in
You know,
life.
one of the great terms
We'll go
that you
home
coined
proud
over the
to
years
have been
was
here.
"Whoa, Nellie." I mean, that's what people associate with you, maybe the most. I like the biggins as well. But where did "Whoa, Nellie" come from?
Oh, Nellie came from my great-grandpa. He was a farmer. He was a whistler, one of these guys. He was always working and always busy, but he really didn't whistle. He just kind of one of those, you know. And then he would do something or drop something or whatever, and oftentimes you'd hear him say, "Whoa, Nellie, whoa, Nellie," that kind of stuff. And it's kind of stuck to the little scruffy kid following him around. And there's a lot to the funky thing that I did for some, 64 years. The Ted Husey, made one of the most knowing comments ever, I think, to me, at least stuck to me. He said, "Never be afraid to turn a phrase. And if you make it interesting enough, they may not know what you just said, but they'll look it up."
Fair enough.
And he's right. So I would go around and pluck things off the bush and see if I could find a different way to say some things. And the older I got, the more willing I was to go back into the Southern vernacular, because some of it's funny. And it's certainly inoffensive in my view, because if you look at the sports announcers that existed in the broadcast industry, particularly after the Second World War, so many of them came from the South. I mean, Lindsey Nelson, Tennessee, Red Barber and Mel Allen, they've been ongoing for a long time. Mel Allen grew up right down the street from Legion Field in Birmingham. And Al Helfer, he's from down that neck of the woods. So they were all over the country. And all of us trying to find ways, I guess, to say it a little differently, to give you some identity. But the one thing you can't ever forget, the playing field is the property of the players and the coaches.
Oh, yeah.
It is not to be used by some fat-butted announcer trying to make a name for himself.
Or May. Margot Kidder. No bare feet. See the signs everywhere during the summer, no bare feet. I just thought I'd startle you with that. You may have bare feet. In fact, you do.
I do. In Japan, that's considered more dirty than having a naked body.
To have bare feet?
Yeah, that's very bad.
Well, in some people's cases
or
it is.
China, maybe it's China. One of them.
I don't know.
It's not done.
Bare feet are considered obscene in some...
Obscene, yeah.
Wow. I hope we're not seen in whatever country that is. What have you brought me?
I'm from Vancouver, and this was in the Vancouver paper, and it was an article by a woman whose name I've forgotten, and she was talking about the 10 most sexy men in North America, and she says, "And last, but hardly the least, is television's Dick Cavett. He alone is going to usher in the era of the sexy leprechaun." Cavett is scared of women. That's his charm. He hides behind his wit like a brave coward with the face of a cowboy hero, a two-fisted pixie.
Oh.
There you go.
Could you vomit from that? What is that?
It's
a two-fisted pixie.
What does that mean?
Oh, get this chicken knuckle.
No, listen, you're the...
Who wants a two-fisted pixie? Have you ever heard of anybody saying, I'm just dying to find a two-fisted pixie?
Do you know what I say when I was on the desert? I used to say, let me know when Angel Face comes on. And I'd come in the room and look at you.
And you were talking about me?
Yes,
You're weird too, then. What is this?
You are one of the 10 most sexy men in North America.
What was the part about last, though?
Hardly the least, it says. She
I'm last but hardly the least. Could you underline that part? What? That is really about as nauseating a little thing as I've ever run into.
I don't think it is.
No?
No.
A two-fisted pixie, so I almost got it wrong. Well, how are you otherwise?
I'm great.
How would you like to have people writing things like that about you they don't even know about? Who is this woman?
She wrote a book called The Sensuous Woman.
Oh, it's that babe, is it?
Did you have a...
Yes, the woman who wrote Sensuous Woman. No, Jay is her name. She's a mysterious woman who
No,
calls
she
herself
revealed her
Jay.
name. She revealed
And she
her
did
name.
reveal her name, and
But I
it slipped my
forgot it.
mind again, which probably will put me in 11th place if you watch the show tonight. But that's interesting. So you live in Vancouver,
you know,
but how
your
come...
ear is red. I think you're blushing.
Only my ears blush.
Isn't that nice?
Yeah, I do. Talk about things like that always sort of bothers me. I don't know what it is.
But your ears?
Yeah. Well, how do you expect a two-fisted pixie to react? That's the worst thing I ever heard. You live in Vancouver, but you're an actress. Actresses are generally found in Los Angeles or New York. How can you be this? How is that possible?
Well, I don't much like Los Angeles or New York as a place to live. Oh.
Really?
No. In Vancouver, I have mountains and a beach and...
So you've gone Vancouver on us.
I've gone Vancouver, yeah. 100%.
How old were you when you started in movies, if that isn't too personal?
That's not personal.
No?
No. I did TV and stuff, starting at 16.
Yeah.
And TV and film, and then I've only done 2 American films.
Why have I gotten the impression from something I read about you that you can take acting or leave it?
That's right.
Is that why I have?
That's why.
Now, what does
Yeah.
that mean? You mean if somebody said to you, you cannot make a film again, would you be you'd say, okay.
Well, right now, I'm learning how to edit so that I won't always have to be an actress.
You can edit film.
I'm learning. I'm learning the CBC in Canada, which is like BBC in London, it's government-sponsored TV, is letting me learn the technical stuff there. And then also Bob Altman, who's editing the film he just shot in Texas, in Vancouver, because he's moving up to Vancouver, has said I could hang around and be assistant to the assistant. So that's really neat.
If you end up on the cutting room floor, you can put others there.
Right.
Anyway, we have a message from our local station, and we'll be right back. Talking to Janis Joplin, Gloria Swanson, and Margot Kidder. What was that?
I said I learned a trick that the actresses did in the movies in the 20s and the 30s. I had to do a test in Hollywood, and I had to wear, you know those very slinky satin dresses that you wore no underwear under at all? I couldn't figure out why actresses in the old movies always had hard nipples, and it just looked so sexy. And I found out I asked the director finally, and he told me it's because they always kept ice cubes in the dressing room. And isn't that wild? Isn't that incredible? That it just blew. I shouldn't have said that, right?
And as you know, opinion in and outside South Africa is divided, very much divided, on whether sanctions are an effective way of pressurising the Botha government into speeding up constitutional reforms. Now, what do we feel? Well, the British government is opposed to apartheid, but anti-sanctions. Joining us is John Carlyle, the Conservative MP for Luton North, and African National Congress spokesman Frene Jimwala. Welcome to both of you, welcome all of you. But recorded this morning in South Africa is Winnie Mandela, the wife of imprisoned leader Nelson Mandela. We asked her for her views on British sanctions.
My views are the views we have always held, that is the people of this country, in the name of the African National Congress and all the other freedom-loving people of this land, we have called on the nations, particularly Britain, America, France, and all the other countries that have been vetoing the question of sanctions against South Africa. We have called on these nations to help us shake off apartheid. This call has been escalating now because of the present political situation in the country. We are calling on all those who have shown their sympathy, their solidarity with the oppressed people of South Africa to show their solidarity more than ever before. The country has been plunged into the worst violence any land has ever seen without a formal declaration of war. Pretoria has decided to eliminate our leadership, not only by putting them behind bars. Pretoria has adopted a new stand to eliminate opponents of apartheid by actually killing them. Our children are dying in the streets. Our parents are dying. The country generally is in a state of turmoil. We know of no alternative to that violence other than a call to our friends to apply sanctions at this hour to this country, not tomorrow, not yesterday, now, to save our country.